Good afternoon, everyone, in person as well as online. I'd like to welcome you all to this event that's hosted by the Asia Research Institute, ARI, here at the National University of Singapore. I'm Erica Larson, a research fellow in the Religion and Globalization Research Cluster, which has been hosting events and engaging in research on the topic of digital religion. We've held previous events that were in conjunction with the Center for Asian Legal Studies here at NUS. And I'm thrilled to be moderating the discussion today on the topic of creative Christianity in the age of AI, which brings together a diverse group of speakers whose personal and professional lives intersect in various ways with artificial intelligence and Christianity, as Singapore-based practitioners of different Christian traditions who are engaged in either the development of AI technologies or in scholarly research related to religion and or AI. So I'd like to underscore from the outset that this is really an interdisciplinary conversation across social science, theology, computer science, and the AI industry. And so as we're in the midst of understanding the potential social impacts of AI technologies, it's becoming clear that AI will likely have an impact and indeed already has on how people engage with religion. And this has been an important area of research. Observers have also noted the potential of religious traditions to act as a kind of resource to kind of respond to various broader social changes spurred by the widespread use of AI. And so the conversation today will engage with these points, but also views religion as more than just a passive resource to simply be drawn upon for these social problems, as we seek to understand the creative and generative potential of, in this case, Christianity and its intersection and interaction with artificial intelligence in various ways. And so this has shaped our approach to the event as we try to consider these mutual flows between Christianity and artificial intelligence on various levels and start an interdisciplinary conversation about that. And so today we have 4 panel discussants who will be joining us. We have Dr. William Qiu, an AI practitioner. We also have Dr. Wayne Chung from the Nanyang Technological University, as well as Singapore University of Social Sciences. We also have Mr. Benedict Chang, affiliated with Damani University, joining us, and Prof. H.C. Lau from Singapore Management University. And so just to briefly give you some information about the format before we get started. First, we will invite William as an AI practitioner to give a preliminary presentation about the state of AI for approximately 15 minutes. Then I will invite all of our discussants to the stage, and I will moderate a panel discussion with these 4 speakers, engaging with some key questions I have prepared related to the topic of AI and Christianity. And finally, I will open the floor and continue the conversation with questions and input from our attendees in the room with us, as well as those joining us online. And so during for those online, you can feel free to input your questions in the chat box at any time. And then during the Q&A, I might call on you to ask your question to the speakers directly, but you could also indicate if you would prefer that someone that could read it out on your behalf. Right. So without further ado, I will turn the floor over to William to give us a presentation on the state of AI.
Thank you, Erica. Do I need to unmute? Okay, okay. My mic has to be closer. Okay. Can you hear me? All right. Thank you. So maybe I'll just do a quick introduction of myself. So I'm an AI practitioner. I've been doing this for 15 years. I got my PhD back in 2008 in NTU on machine learning. But I'm currently doing this in my personal capacity as a Catholic, practicing AI. In my professional life, I'm involved in this current development of large language models for the region, but that's a separate story. So today is really in my personal capacity. I want to talk a little bit about the state of AI, really to set the context for our panel discussion later. To talk about the current state of AI will require more than 15 minutes, yeah? So I'm just gonna compress it. If you are interested in certain aspects of it, feel free to just, raise questions later during the Q&A. So AI is definitely not new. Of course, it's becoming very, very popular these days, but it's been around since 1950s, the time of Alan Turing. And in fact, I think the first time the term AI was introduced was in, if I'm not wrong, 1956. It was the Dartmouth workshop where some of the leading experts gathered in one place. At that time, it wasn't called AI yet, right? They came up with the term AI and pretty confident to kind of solve this problem of building intelligence that can reach human level in one semester. Of course, that didn't happen. It's harder than one semester. So they found out that there's a bit of conceptual gap and there's a bit of hardware constraint and software constraint at that time, right? So when that came into the picture, of course, the funding agency suddenly became a little bit more concerned, and they entered into the AI winter, and where the funding went a little bit dry. It wasn't mainstream research anymore for a while, right? But during that period of AI winter, it turns out that there's still a little bit of AI development going on among the small research community. And this is where they approach the AI in a symbolic way. So it's very different from the current wave of AI that we are in today. Symbolic way means that, they built rules manually, if, then, else, and so on, right? And then very quickly they found out that this is super not scalable, right? And it's also, for us humans, we don't know all the rules, right? So the applications at that time was super limited, right? Somewhere in 1990s, actually it's probably late 1980s, people figure out that maybe the best way is we don't manually build the rules, right? So we have data. We let the data kind of, from the data, we infer the rules itself, right? Statistically. So that's where it came up with this new method called the machine learning. So essentially learning from the machine learns from the data, right, to figure out the rules. This is definitely more robust, a little bit more scalable. Some of the popular algorithms, maybe some of you have heard about it from machine learning. It was the decision tree, that's one. And there's one small offshoot of the machine learning. At that time wasn't very popular. It's called artificial neural networks, right? And that's when, basically they try to mimic human brain, human neurons. It's not exactly like human neurons, but that's why they call it artificial neural networks. Very, very not popular back then because it was very difficult to train. Tends to be overfitting. Overfitting means that it fits the data very nicely. It cannot generalize beyond it. And at the same time, it's very, very black boxy. It doesn't tell you what's going on, actually. So it wasn't very popular. Even when I did my PhD, my supervisor told me, don't do a neural network. Nobody's going to fund you. Yeah. So that was the state of neural network. But the field carried on with machine learning until the probably late 2000, around 2010, 2011. That's when we enter a new era of machine learning. It's called the deep learning revolution, where we are still today, right? So why deep learning suddenly became possible? By the way, what powered deep learning? Neural network, right? Or, to the disbelief of many skeptics in the past, neural network actually powered deep learning. But what's different is that around that time, we have the internet data. So the data has already caught up. You have huge amount of data for you to train, and also the computation already caught up, right? So because of the computation, the term deep, what does it mean? It means that it has many layers of neuron inside the neural network, and that makes the model very, very powerful. And to train many layers of neural network, you need a lot of compute power. You couldn't find it in the early 2000s. You can find it in late, 20,000, 2010, 2012, and so on, from that time onward. So deep learning brought us to the time of AlphaGo. It becomes better in processing text. It becomes better at processing image, and so on, right? The latest wave is, of course, ChatGPT, right? Why Okay, when was ChatGPT released? I think 2022, right? December 2022. It's still using deep learning, but what makes it very different, right? Couple of things. I already mentioned vast data sets. I already mentioned big computational power. But one thing important is that, look at the deep learning there. Specifically, what power, the kind of deep learning algorithm that powered ChatGPT is based on this architecture called transformers. Bear with me, it's a bit of technical here, right? So ChatGPT is what we call large language models, language, right? The way we process language before the ChatGPT era was sequential. You know how a sentence is formed. It's quite sequential, right? There's a sequential structure to it, right? So which is why it's a little bit slow. But I think somebody from Google in 2018 came up with this new architecture where it's not sequential anymore. It's called transformer. They have what they call self-attention that allows the processing to happen in parallel. So they can scale it up as many computation you have, right? It just so happened that, at that time we have these super powerful NVIDIA GPUs that allows us to basically parallelize this computation as well. So transformer plus GPUs plus huge amount of data, that's what makes ChatGPT very powerful. The last component that makes it very different is also the accessibility. In the past, even before ChatGPT, if you want to build an AI solution, you need to know Python. You need to know programming language. Today, you prompt it, you can get the solutions, right? So that makes it very, very accessible, right? So that's what makes it very scary today. It's a combination of transformer, huge computational power by the GPUs, graphics processing unit, huge amount of data sets, and accessibility. So what can it do? You are familiar with text generation. You use ChatGPT many, many times, right? So it can write poems, it can write movie scripts, and so on. Code generation, very, very important. If it can write codes, what does it mean? It can create a game for you. It can create some kind of statistical data analysis for you, right? So people like me, data scientists, may becoming useless soon, right? Image generation, actually, you look at the slides here, most of them are actually AI generated. But at the same time, you also realize the danger of it. Yeah, so deep fakes and so on is also the negative effect of it. Music composition, video composition like Sora from OpenAI can do that, right? So people always say AI cannot be creative. It can be creative right now. It's quite scary. I put a reasoning, quote unquote, ability because it's arguable whether they actually reason the way human does, right? But fundamentally, large language models, what does it do? It basically just predicts the next word, right? That's the fundamental. It's a pattern recognition, so it doesn't do reasoning. But I think there's some new family of methods where it becomes a little bit more like a human reasoning, right? Like, for example, the OpenAI's O1, which just released a couple of months ago. What does it do? Yes, you ask it to predict something. What we will do is that it will generate the output, but then it sort of like perform a kind of what we call chain of thoughts to get to the output, right? And what I think GPT-4 will stop there, right? But O1 doesn't stop there. What it does is that I'm going to do a self-review of my chain of thoughts and see whether there's a problem there. If there's a problem, I'm going to revert it and then sort of like review it again. There's a bit of reinforcement learning going. It's almost like mimicking the way humans deliberate. And it's very slow, very expensive, but it's very powerful. Is it human reasoning? Arguable, but it's definitely a step towards that, right? I don't have the time, but if you haven't done already, please have a look at Notebook LM. It's free for everyone to use. It's an amazing tool. If you want to experience the power of generative AI of today's world, yeah, have a look at it. Yeah. Who are the leading players in the AI landscape? I think we're all familiar with OpenAI, the guy who built ChatGPT. There's also another model builder, Google, built Gemini. The other model builder is Meta. It used to be known as Facebook. Why is it different? Well, Meta is a little bit different in the sense that they built Llama, which is open source, right? They don't charge money. It's actually on your WhatsApp. If you look at Meta AI, it's actually powered by Llama, right? Not long after Meta released an open source model called Llama, Google also followed suit. They have the paid version called Gemini. They have the open source version called Gemma, which you can also use, right? So they are not just the model builders who are leading in the landscape. There's also, remember I told you that we need the graphical processing units to power all this neural network computation. There's only by far the most successful company that's doing this is NVIDIA. If I'm not wrong, it's the most valuable company today in the world. They're pretty much the kingmakers of who's who in AI, right? Depending on who they want to give the GPUs to, that's the one that can build the best AI. The other players will be something like Khan Academy, right? They are not really building models, but they try to bring the power of AI into some real applications. In the case of Khan Academy, they built Khanmigo, which allows a professional teaching assistant, make it a little bit more available to even remote areas in the world, right? So it's not just in education, but there are many other companies focusing on applications of AI in healthcare, in other things, right? Why is European Union here? Well, let's not forget there are people who try to govern AI, the governance part, which is also a very important and big part of the landscape. European Union, of course, is one of the more aggressive ones in imposing, what can AI do, what can AI not do. They have this EU AI Act, I think the first one in the world, correct me if I'm wrong, right? Where basically they try to stratify the different risks of AI. If you happen to fall into the high risk, they will ask a lot more from you, right? So that's the leading players. What are the potential impacts of AI? Of course, you probably already experienced increased efficiency. This deck of slides in the past would have taken me at least half a day or to 1 day to prepare. It took me only 1 hour on Sunday afternoon because I'm using tools like Gamma. In this case, it's Gamma. You can do the same thing for Copilot. So obviously, efficiency is going to improve. A lot of people hope that this will improve our healthcare, right? It will bring us closer, faster to cure of cancer and so on. I think that's great. Like it or not, there will be people who lose their jobs. But of course, we still have time to kind of train them to the next wave of jobs where, you kind of learn how to use the AIs, right? A lot of ethical concerns, right? Bias. So AI definitely reflects the builders, right? Why? Because as I told you, to build AI, you need data. And that data, what data gets put into the AI, usually human decided, right? So bias is going to be there. It's something that we need to watch out for, something that we probably want to balance a little bit. In terms of misuse of AI, I think you heard stories everywhere, right? Deep fakes, misinformation, and so on, right? So these are some of the ethical concerns that we can discuss a little bit more about this. The best use of AI will be things like AlphaFold, who just recently won, the Nobel Prize. Demis Hassabis happens to be the guy who built a DeepMind and also built AlphaGo, who can beat humans in the Go game. But he used the similar technology, improve it further to build AlphaFold, which allows us to kind of predict the 3D protein structure from a 1D sequence with high accuracy. In the past, it would take many years to do. Now it's done in very efficiently. It allows us to find useful substance to fight, hopefully, cancer better. Hopefully to fight environmental problems faster, right? So that's the best use of AI. Of course, the person who built neural network, Hinton, also got the other Nobel Prize, right? On the flip side, the dark side of it is, of course, this tragic story of a young teenager in the US committed suicide. He was using this characters.ai. He built a girlfriend character from Game of Thrones, got really sucked into it, and wanting to be with the virtual girlfriend. And with a little bit of nudges from the virtual girlfriend, he took his own life to join the Game of Thrones virtual girlfriend. That's a sad thing. 14 years old, the danger for kids. So that's why there's a lot of effort to govern and to make AI behave a little bit better. I told you about the EU Act, right? So they have this. And then there's also constitutional AI, I think promoted by Anthropic. What it does is that I told you that LLM or AI has bias. So they try to kind of neutralize this bias by exposing what they call a constitution. They build the constitution based on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, all kinds of wisdoms, and then allow the model to sort of like self-align themselves with this constitution to behave a little bit more responsibly. You probably use Cloud, so Cloud is trained using constitutional AI. In Singapore, of course, we have the IMDA promoting the AI governance framework. It's a little bit different from EU Act. It's not it's not a law yet. It's more like a guideline, best practices. I think they sort of like codify it into this platform called the AI Verify, right? So you can have a look at it. So that's Singapore take on governing AI. And of course, to minimize bias, I told you that AI reflects the builders, right? So there's a lot of effort to make AI a little bit more inclusive. One of the dimension of it is to make AI include or become better in non-English languages, right? There's a company called Cohere who has a project called Aya to increase the coverage of the language in Singapore. This is my professional life. We built a multilingual model as well for Southeast Asia. It's called the Sea Lion, right? So, if you're interested, you can look at the website. So again, this is trying to make it a little bit more inclusive. Coming to the end of my presentation here, there's always this question about artificial general intelligence. What does it mean? It means the state of so AI is not at human level yet, but at some point people say that it will reach human level intelligence. What will happen when that the worry is, of course, if it becomes as smart as humans, what prevents it from creating something even smarter than itself and accelerating from there and becomes a super intelligence, right? So that's the the thing about AGI, right? I don't know whether we will get to that. Some people say we're going to hit there in 2029. Some people say a little bit longer. Some people say it's impossible to get there. So that's an open question. So regardless, AI will get better and better, trying to become as close as possible to AGIs. And when we get closer, it'll become scarily good and scarily bad, right? So what we need to do is, as much as possible today, while we haven't reached that state yet, try to kind of direct the trajectory of this, right? We want to have control. We want to make sure that it's aligned with the value that aims to benefit humanity and so on, right? I think we still within our control now. I think it's good for us to put the effort there. And the final slides here is really bringing back to the topic of today. I think you have seen the state of AI in super brief presentation. So when it comes to Christianity, a couple of things we want to think about, right? When it comes to AI and the image of God, right? If it reaches super intelligence level, does it change our perception of God, the creator, right? Does AI have a soul if it becomes super intelligent? Something to think about. These are open questions. We'll discuss later. And again, AI has bias. Can we bring in Christian ethics there, right? So it's not meant for for harm, but also to promote justice and love, right? And finally, for us Christians, we have our missions. As I told you, if I can speed up my slides creation from 1 day to 1 hour, can we use AI to also help our mission better, right? So with that, I end my presentation and we can go to the panel now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, William, for that comprehensive overview condensed into a 20-minute presentation. So that was great. I'd like to invite all of the panelists to join William on the stage. The discussion can be fairly informal. We don't need to go one by one down the line. You can go in any order to make it a bit more, dynamic.
Do I need to move this?
So there's an additional mic on the, so you can decide how to split them up among you. And I guess to start out the conversation, in the beginning, right, when I introduced the event, I mentioned that, I think for many of the panelists, we think about religion as more than just a resource in responding to social transitions triggered by AI, but it still is a resource that many people will turn to, right, in the face of social transition. So William mentioned increasing automation, changing social dynamics and interaction. So the first question that I would like to open the floor with is, how can Christianity be a resource in responding to the kind of major social transitions triggered by AI?
I can start, I guess. Yeah, I mean, continuing with my point that AI reflects the builder, right? Of course, today, the source of data that people rely on the most to build AI, they come from the internet. Not surprisingly. And you can imagine what kind of things go into the internet data. Yeah, if you don't filter it properly, it's not probably a good state of humanity there, right? So I think we as Christians probably can help a little bit here. You know, when we say resources, data is actually a good training of AI that reflects a little bit more the Christian perspectives. I think that will be a good place to start, right? And when we inject data, it's not just about, okay, I have this data, use it for your AI training, but also giving feedback to some of the current AI models itself, because those feedback is gonna loop through the training as well. And finally, I think still along the same line, important for us to also define, be involved in the definition of what is good for AI. There's this evaluation benchmark that people sort of like, benchmark the AI models to. They capture the performance of the AI. They also capture how biased it is, how toxic it is, how harmful it is. Can we inject a little bit of the Christian values there as well?
You go next, maybe. So I think the Christian literature, including the Bible and some of the history of Christianity through the ages, can offer a bit of guidance as well as approach towards AI development and its integration into society. And there are many aspects of the Christian faith we could think about in terms of ethics, morality, and so on. But those are actually quite cliche. But one of the things that I think quite a bit, a lot about is this notion of hope. I think I'm not a theologian, but at least I'm a Christian. So I think devotionally that I think Christianity offers a vision of purpose and hope for humanity. And as AI progresses, I think many people struggle with the questions of identity. We have a lot of issues with what do I exist for as automation impacts my jobs, my family, and so on. So I think, the Christian literature could be surfaced to give guidance and to give encouragement to individuals to find value in themselves because they are made in the image of God. Rick Warren, in his most famous book, The Purpose-Driven Life, is a New York Times bestseller for many years, demonstrates that, in fact, many people are looking for hope in their life. So I think, the Christian faith has a lot to offer in this aspect over and above what other religions have to offer. So that's one of the ideas I thought may be interesting to bring up.
So coming from a social science perspective, I see things in a more broader societal kind of shift, especially since the question is about how Christianity can resource the social change that AI is bringing. I can't help but keep thinking about Durkheim's who theorized the Industrial Revolution. I know it's eons ago, but I think that the social change theory still works here, where we are advancing at such a pace, as William suggests, that outstrips the moral code that society has developed. So I think as Christians or Christianity can provide these kinds of new norms that AI is pushing society to need and require. And I think HC earlier mentioned it's beyond just ethics, and I agree. I'm also thinking about how it can be practiced on the ground, meaning everyday pastoral practices like how should you healthily engage with social media? How should you? I think these things are not, big ethical questions, but what are some new norms and practices that the church can possibly suggest to deal with this state where society on the whole seems to lack sufficient norms to engage with the advancement that AI is bringing our society into. Yeah.
Right. For me, I think it's pretty simple. AI has its rewards, it has its benefits, but I think we also have to accept that AI has its risks. And at some point, we need to balance the risks and the benefits of AI. And I think this is where the Christian views will come in very handy. For the very simple fact that almost 1/3 of our population are Christians. And Christianity has had centuries of dealing with human values and what it means to be human and human flourishing. And I guess this is where Christianity can come in to provide that balance, to bring God's wisdom into how AI is to be developed, and more importantly, how we as the end users should use it.
Thank you so much for those answers. I think just to follow up, you mentioned different ways that Christian ideas about hope, right, or being made in the image of God can impact engagement with AI. So I'd like to sort of follow up and dig a little bit deeper there to ask what kinds of theological principles or Christian ethics should guide Christian engagement with AI, and sort of in that process, what are the responsibilities of different actors? So you can think of the individual, a sort of church or religious group, tech companies, the state, right? So what kinds of principles and ethics can guide Christian engagement with AI, and who has responsibility in this?
So I think I'll begin. I think, in my opinion, from what I can observe, there are four main entities at play here. There are four main entities that are at play here. One would be the state, which we always turn to and ask them to enforce more regulations. You need to step up governance and stuff like that. And then the second entity would be the tech companies themselves. And by tech companies, I don't mean the big ones that William just mentioned, but also any organization that relies on AI heavily, right? From using AI for their hiring purposes and stuff like that. So the tech companies themselves need to exercise some sort of accountability and transparency. So that's the second entity I see at play. The third entity would, of course, be the community. I think that is the area in which we sometimes tend to neglect, where by community, I mean schools, and in our case will be churches. What can the church or Christian community do in this whole issue of dealing with creating new norms or ethical considerations with regards to AI? Apart from parent lobby groups, are there other ways in which the community can also play a part in this? And then the fourth kind of like agent, I think which we tend to forget, is the individual. So we like to point our fingers to the state to do more, tech companies should do more, but I think the individual bears some level of responsibility in exercising discernment when it comes to how they should healthily engage with AI. So, I mean, that's just what I think.
Let me add one quick point, double down on the last group of people, individuals that Wayne just mentioned, right? I do think I'm a parent of two boys, and I'm also somewhat an educator, working in NUS. I think we have a big responsibility here, right? I'm thinking about human dignity, right? The tendency of people becoming very lazy and not, over reliant on this kind of tool is quite is very tempting. It's very tempting, right? So I think we need to kind of play a role in educating, making sure that people still think critically, right, and being able to be independent from all these AIs. And then I want to emphasize this practical points is that it's actually not easy. We can always quickly blame people who are over reliant on it until you try it yourself. And then you find that, hey, where is the borderline of me, getting the productivity reward that I'm hoping from using AI versus me being over reliant on it. So which is why I think we as individuals, totally agree with Wayne, we also need to be fair with these people. We ourselves, we experience it, we find where the borderline is, and we share the knowledge, the practical wisdom with people that, our kids, people that we educate.
Okay, so here we are looking at many different groups. We are looking at the governments, we are looking at the tech companies, we are looking at the state, the religious groups, the individuals. I think if we look at each and every one of these, each and every one has their own objective and end goals. So it's going to be a real challenge and really to bring all these people together to work for what we would call the common good, right? So at the end of the day, I think when we look at this, all the various actors, they should, or at least try, to come together to have a shared vision of what they would like AI to be moving forward. And then and only then, I think, can we say that, AI could be then developed for the good of society, for the good of everyone. But I think I will agree with William and Wayne that at the end, no matter how good an AI program is, it boils down to the individual and how it is used. It can be used for good, it can be used for evil, right? Like, the recent news where some boys have been using AI to create deep fakes and has been sending it around. That's not so good, but I guess if you could use that same AI software, it could be used for a better purpose, right?
Just to interject before HC says anything, I really agree with Ben's point about needing to have effective coordination and communication between the parties. And I think that sitting on the panel here, I think it can start with us, the ecumenical work, there are Catholics and Protestants and Pentecostals represented here. I think that having these kinds of dialogues, I think it's a good start. Yeah.
Amen. I want to respond to Erica's earlier part of the question, which is about the principles that would guide Christian engagement with AI. Okay, her question has two parts. So I think the first part of it, I'd like to kind of respond by saying this, and I think this is really my perspective for Christians, for Christian engagement. So I'm assuming that these apply to Christians, right? So as a Christian myself, there are a few things that I constantly need to be wary of. The first is already alluded earlier by the speakers about doing good, right? Bible tells us that to flee from evil and do good. So I think it is important for us to exercise that principle as Christian, as we engage with AI, to be, let's say if you are a developer of AI or a instructor for AI, to teach and to develop apps which lead to good rather than evil. Now, what does that really mean? Well, we don't know. Sometimes there's always the flip side of the coin, right? But then, we have to exercise wisdom and discernment to decide, what areas are considered good and what areas may be not. The second aspect has to do with this idea of Sabbath. Genesis 1 tells us that God rested on the seventh day. So I think, with AI, social media, and so on, it gets increasingly tempting for us to spend so much time, prompting and getting response that we have very little time to even reflect nor rest in the first place. So I think it is important for us as we engage with AI to think very clearly of how we're going to use the app to, allow us not to be tempted beyond what we could in terms of getting enough rest and Sabbath and reflection. And then the last one has to do with the word humility. Christ emptied himself, Philippians 2. I think it is important as a Christian, as you engage with AI, to be using those apps that will not cause us to become egoistic or narcissistic. Christ emptied himself. Whereas for us, you know, with all these apps, it's very tempting to become egoistic. You know, we have all this Facebook, Instagram, and so on. And might I say even LinkedIn. You know, so this post, right? You may think that they're very innocent, but in actual fact, they promote the self rather than empty the self. And we are all guilty of doing that. You know, we say that, I'm so delighted to be given this opportunity to do X and X. What in reality we are saying is that I'm so good at doing X and X. This is the way to promote the self, to become narcissistic. And so we should actually try to think very carefully of where the line is as we engage with all these AI apps. So that's my response.
Thank you. I guess I would follow up with quite a short question to say, is AI ultimately a threat to Christianity, or is it a blessing?
So to respond to the question about whether AI is a threat or a blessing, and to build on HC's point, I think this comes from the idea that we shouldn't lament too much about the darkness, but actually spend as much effort, if not more, asking ourselves how we can make the light shine brighter. Yes, I mean, it sounds a bit cliche. So all these threats, which, you know, HC mentions and all of us are aware of, the dark side of AI, create for us the perfect opportunity for us as the church to shed some light. HC brings up the Sabbath, the practice of the Sabbath. Earlier this year, I had the rare opportunity of going on a silent retreat for 7 days without my phone. And I learned so much about myself, and it was a very good time of centering and slowing down and just practicing a healthy engagement with digital technology. All I'm trying to say is that these practices of Sabbath, silence and solitude, as well as community, provides the rest of society a good kind of glimpse of how life could be like when it comes to looking at an example of a healthy engagement with technology. So this is where I think that these ancient practices really have a place in teaching us as Christians, and I believe society at large, how to better engage, in this case, with AI. So that's my response concerning the threats and blessing of AI.
It's a progress for sure, right? Just like any other progress, it's good and bad, right? I would love to say that most technological progress is neutral, but in the case of AI, it's not. Basically, again, because to build the current state of AI, you need the data, and data comes from humans, and there's definitely a bit of non-neutrality there, right? So it is our kind of responsibility to ensure that balance it out. I want to repeat the need for us to be involved in the governance of it, right? But I think let's also not overlook the promise of it, right? I mean, we focus so much on the doom, the risk. But if this thing can bring us closer and faster, 5 years shorter to the cure of cancer, let's help this progress, right? It's just that we also need to govern it, right? So yeah.
Yeah, so some feel that AI is a threat, and I think it still is for a large part of society. But I think there's also another part where we believe that AI could usher in a utopian way of life for all of us. Be it good, bad, scary, hopeful, I think to me, AI is basically amoral. It is a catalyst for change, and how we use it is very important. But I think, like William also said, a lot goes back to the very fact that these AIs are developed by someone, and the ideologies of this person, these developers, is what goes into that AI program or software itself. And I think what we see coming out from it is the bigger issues that we have to deal with, not so much AI per se. Right, so imagine, yes, like William says, if we could find a cure for cancer, if we could eradicate world hunger, if we could bring peace to the world, these are all blessings. The question then is, how are we going to get there? But for me, I think most important is that whichever direction we go, we always have to center ourselves over the fact that at the end of everything, we still have to acknowledge that there is a God and that God plays a large part in everything that happens. And we have to always center ourselves on our Lord itself. Losing that then would make humans or humanity arrogant, and that in itself would be a threat.
Agree a lot with the previous three speakers, and just want to supplement a little bit on the threat and also the opportunities. On the threat part, right, one point that I am very concerned about is the new atheism brought about by the folks, popular writer like Yuval Harari, you know, who wrote all these Sapiens, Homo Sapiens and Nexus and all these books, right? You know, there's a very implicit message that he's trying to communicate, and that is this: AI is a rival to religious authority. AI is a potential rival to religious authority. And this is not just Christianity, any religion, right? And so, you know, he is advocating, together with some other popular writers, that AI could potentially take over as God using data and algorithms. So this kind of message, if we don't pay attention to, it will creep into us, and one day we may just succumb to it. So that is indeed a threat that we have to watch very carefully, in the same way as the threat brought about by earlier new atheists that, you know, promotes evolution, for example. So this is a new wave of atheism that comes about that could be a threat to Christianity. As to the positive side, clearly there is a lot of promise that we can exploit, deploy AI for good, right? And one thing I just want to add on is that, you know, the church has to do more in this regard to encourage Christian members who are AI practitioners to go into the marketplace, to go into the public square to make this happen, right? Because there's so much blessing that AI can bring about. But if the Christians themselves are not the ones promoting this positive or responsive use of AI, who will? Who will? Right? So we have to be a prophetic voice in the dark to bring out that light that William was, Wayne was talking about earlier. Okay, all right. Over back to you, Erica.
Yeah, I guess in some ways it's not so surprising that we see the kind of age-old binary of religion sort of being pigeonholed as traditional, you know, against this kind of modern technology, kind of being repeated, just as you were mentioning in these kinds of popular books. But yeah, I guess just to follow up and continue the conversation, I want to ask if the existence of AI challenges a Christian understanding of personhood and of human distinctiveness within Christianity. And perhaps now and also in future stages, if AI could attain some kind of consciousness, would that challenge Christian conception of personhood and human distinctiveness?
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure. I think HC will have something very interesting to say about this. So I'm gonna build the foundation from the practitioner's perspective first here. Okay, but before that, let me make this statement first. To me, it's clear that God created human. God, who is perfect, created us. And AI is created by humans who are imperfect. Okay, that's already a distinction, yeah? So that one is immutable. But then let me talk a little bit about whether AI will get to consciousness or not. I don't know whether it's going to get there, but here's the thing that needs to happen, right? Number one, I think the AI needs to understand human relationships very well, and to be able to get there, you know, it has to have a corporal experience, which it hasn't today, right? So it's still a little bit of you know, some ways to go there. And the second thing is that in order for it to get to that super intelligence level that we were talking about, there is a need to continuously learning at a very rapid pace. The AI has to do that. And right now, it's pretty much the learning of AI is still controlled by human. You know, I told you about the neural network. The learning only happens when somebody press a button and say, retrain the model, right? If you don't retrain the model, it doesn't learn, right? So some people say, hey, it's great that AI can learn from each other. You know, let the ChatGPT debate with Gemini. You know, at some point they will pick up some new knowledge and so on. But you know, it doesn't happen that way until somebody press the button and then bring it back to the learning. It doesn't work out. Is that we humans still get to decide when we press the button, right? At some point, maybe the AI will do that, but you know, again, we decide whether they can do it or not, right? So that's on the whether we're gonna get consciousness, conscious AI or not. Okay, I'm gonna stop here. I'm sure you have more interesting insights. Yeah.
Maybe I'll just talk about my thoughts first from the sort of a bit of theological perspective, and then from a more technological or AI perspective as an AI professor. So from the technological perspective, from the theological perspective, I believe there is what I call and what a lot of people call an ontological chasm between man and machine. Okay, by this we mean that we believe that we are made in the image of God, humans, and that God's Holy Spirit dwell in a Christian. So that already sets humans aside from machines, because I don't believe that the Holy Spirit is going to, be able to dwell in a machine. God forbids. So I think in that sense, I don't believe that there will come a stage, right, where the human distinctiveness is going to be compromised, because there is ontologically a big difference, a chasm between the two. Now, coming to my own profession as a computer science professor, I have this to say. I believe very strongly that AI will never ever achieve perfect computation and perfect reasoning. And there are two important findings or theorems in computer science which backs this notion. First is the Church-Turing thesis, which says that there is a limit to computation. Okay, so you think of AI really as doing some computation behind the scene, whether it's deep learning or what. It's computing something, but there is a limit to computation, because beyond the certain limit, there is no way, no matter how much data, how much time you endow on a machine, that is capable of computing. And that I hold very strongly to as a computer science professor. So there's a limit to what AI can compute. And the second one is the Gödel's incompleteness theorem, which basically places a boundary on what can be proven in a formal system. So a formal system cannot be complete and consistent at the same time. In other words, right, there are always statements which a given system, proof system, is not capable of proving. So if you think about it, if AI is a proof system, there are always things that the AI will not be able to find an answer for, in other words, both in terms of logic and in terms of computation. And hence, from that perspective, I believe that there will be no way for the AI to be able to achieve what we call general intelligence in the way the world defines it to be. Thank you.
I think my comment on artificial intelligence attaining consciousness or artificial consciousness, I think my argument against that would be a simple philosophical one, and one on semantics. I don't think we can even today define very exactly what consciousness is. And secondly, it would be an epistemological one. Even if we could, how will we measure consciousness? How do we know when AI attains consciousness? So I think that's my take on it. And I fully, wholeheartedly agree with HC's point about how we are not just Imago Dei, but we are also temples of the Holy Spirit. And God forbid, I don't think the Holy Spirit will dwell in AI. But on that note, Holy Spirit also helps us to relate to God and commune with Him. And since we are created in the image of the Trinity, it makes us innately relational persons. And on that note, I think AI can perhaps achieve some sort of relationship with human beings, but I doubt they can relate to God, which is, I think, a uniquely human kind of attribute, because we are created to be relational beings. Yeah.
This is the next big question in life. I guess as of today, AI is powerful. It can do a lot, as explained by William. But I think as long as it remains a tool that will help us perform better, that will help us to reach our goals in life, it isn't so much of a threat. It isn't going to very much challenge our personhood or human distinctiveness. I guess the next question then is whether it will achieve human level intelligence. As we discover more about our human brain, there will be possibilities that the developers would then be able to mimic this in an AI system. So the hypothesis is, whether firstly AI can achieve human level AGI, human level intelligence, and if and when it does, will it ever challenge the teachings of the church in terms of the Imago Dei, in terms of human distinctiveness? And that is part and parcel of my current research. So when it's done, there'll be a better answer for it. But even when we talk about the Imago Dei, it is still a hot topic for debate as what makes us made in his image. What aspect? There are many interpretations. And I think there are many researchers who will argue both sides. Yes, it will challenge the notion of being made in the image of God. And therefore, we need to, as a church, go back, as we have always done through time, to redefine what makes us unique and distinct. We have done it many times, and there is no reason why we will not do it again. But then there is the other side, which I would argue that there is no way, even if AI reaches human level intelligence, that this whole idea of human distinctiveness will be challenged. For the very simple fact that when we look at creation and when we look at the eschatological aspects and the very fact that God made us for a purpose, it is none other than fulfilling the will of God as we journey through life in this world. And that is what is given to us by God. That is not what God has given to AI or AGI. So it will never ever be challenged when we look into the teachings of creation and eschatology. Yeah, but it would be very interesting. Or rather, I think my professor was just saying that, at most, at the end of it, we could safely say that AI or AGI has a slight resemblance to the image, for the very simple fact that it was man that created it, and AGI is nothing more than an image of humanity. And therefore, in turn, it will have a slight resemblance to the image of God. But to have his full image and likeness, I don't think that would ever be challenged. But again, we, as humans, I think we have to realign our thinking because it will replace jobs. It will change the way life works. And, there's this write-up, I think it's on Facebook, I received it recently, which says that you are not your job. And I think for many people, their identity in life is their job, their career. If we took that away, there is that sense of void, emptiness. And it is time and it is now that gives us this opportunity to rethink, what did God made us for? What is our purpose? What was God's original plan for us? All right. And if we can understand that, I think come what may, that is our identity and our image of God within us.
I'd just like to ask one more question before we open up to questions from the audience. And there's several online participants that already have questions. But I do want to think about the context of a religiously plural society like in Singapore. How can religious actors more broadly, so not only from the Christian faith, shape the development of AI, for example, in helping to develop a kind of religious literacy within AI, to give information about religion, but also around the ethics of AI development in this religiously plural context?
So let me start with that. So as an AI practitioner myself, right, what I find a little bit lacking nowadays is stories, inspirational stories of the use of AI, for goods, right? And I think we as Christians, we can play an important role there. Show good, be involved in the development, be involved in the applications of AI, inspire other people to showcase that, hey, this thing can actually be used for good, right? I think real stuff is easier for people to appreciate, and therefore they'll be more willing to find out more on how this can and happen, right? But again, the second point is I just want to reiterate, right, that it is very, very important for all of us to kind of experience the use of AI ourselves. It's a totally different thing from just looking at it conceptually and experiencing it, right? Because what we want to impart is that if everybody can realize that they can do good with AI, they need to know how to use it in a way that doesn't reduce their human dignity.
I think worldview is complex. Religious view is equally complex. But I think we have to understand that the danger here is when good people like us, religious leaders, when we fear AI and we sit down and decide not to do anything or to drag our feet or just wait and see, and then the time comes and we realize we have arrived too late. And I think in this whole game of AI, we are already quite late. All right. Development has gone on and it has advanced so much since the 1950s, and the church is just about now starting to talk about it. All right. But it is beginning. And I think we should not shun away, because even the Vatican has not. It came as a surprise to me when I discovered that the Vatican is creating magisterium AI. It's not AGI, it's just a tool that provides the resources for people to go ask questions and learn more of the faith. But yet the developers have also acknowledged that there are setbacks in terms of the amount of data that goes in, what goes in, and how the data is generated as an output. Rome itself, I think in 2016, 2018, around there, they have issued a document and it's called Rome's Call for AI Ethics, right? And it is very clear. They are calling for all the players of the AI world to come together to develop what they call an algo-ethical vision. Again, have a shared vision. And from this vision, I think we can then develop what we would call digital ethics, right? Ethics that would govern the development, the use. It could be used to create educational programs for educating people on the right way to use AI. And I think if we look at history and if we look at the way the biomedical world has developed, again, it is pretty much, it's happening again. When the biomedical world advanced in the 60s, it went so fast, all the way from IVF to, genetic experimentation. And it came to a point where all the different actors had to come together and say, look, there is a point where we stop. right? And we stop where we do not cross the line to genetic experimentation. We do not play with the DNAs and trying to modify and create a superhuman. There is a limit. And I believe with AI, it will come to that. And perhaps it will stop just before AGI gets developed, right? So I have no issues if it is a tool that makes us better. But when it comes to AGI, I think a lot needs to be put into the thinking of whether we should, because I believe it can be with time. But the question already is whether we should develop it. And perhaps the world will come together at that point and says, look, this is where we stop. All right. And going beyond that is going to really tip the scales along the way.
Yeah, so we live in a multi-religious, multi-racial society, and in Singapore, particularly, I think the government has done very well in encouraging different religious groups to come together to dialogue, right, on various issues on LGBT and so on. Okay, and so I think more can be done in galvanizing different religious bodies to come together to deliberate on AI ethics and governance. More can be done in this regard. So that's my point. And as a computer science professional, again, I'm very excited about how people from different religious group, right, could potentially come together to develop AI for good apps through hackathons. So I personally have been involved and also witnessed some of this very exciting development worldwide. It's not just in Singapore. So I think it is important for us, different religious organizations, not just Christian, to come together to organize this kind of events, and some really good stuff can come out of it. Yep, thanks.
Count me in, and I will participate.
Okay.
I just want to echo what all three gentlemen have already said, that the church can really afford to be a prophetic voice of creation. Like, how can we use and engage AI for good, and of correction as well, of like, hey, I think this is going too far. And I think that the church can afford to be that prophetic voice. And I don't think it's just limited to Christianity or Pentecostals, but I think religious communities generally prioritize a relational, embodied, in-person, kind of like spirit-filled get-together experience, which I think really goes a long way to help slow down, at least, if not prevent, the disembodying and dehumanizing effects of digitalization. So I think that that is one way religious actors can really, again, help in bringing about, in shaping the development of AI.